In the vast tapestry of human history, certain stories refuse to fade. They whisper from ancient ruins, echo in sacred texts, and survive amidst passed down through generations. Today, we embark on a journey through time, unraveling hidden truths, challenging long-held beliefs, and exploring mysteries that shape civilizations. From lost empires to forbidden knowledge, each revelation brings us closer to understanding the forces that built and destroyed worlds. This is not just history. It's the untold, the extraordinary, the forgotten. Welcome to History Vault, where the past comes alive and every secret is worth discovering. The Maya civilization emerged as one of the most remarkable and influential cultures in the ancient world, flourishing in Mesoamerica for over 2,000 years. At its height, this civilization spanned vast regions of present-day Mexico, Guatemala, Belize, Honduras, and El Salvador, creating a legacy of art, architecture, astronomy, mathematics, and written language that continues to inspire fascination today. The story of the Maya begins with the gradual development of complex agricultural societies around 2000 BC, as small villages grew into ceremonial centers and eventually into massive urban cities during what historians call the Classic Period, roughly between 250 and 900 AD. This was the golden age of the Maya, an era of extraordinary innovation, cultural achievement, and political influence. Cities like Tikal, Palenque, Copan, and Calakmul became centers of power, each ruled by its own dynasty of kings and queens. These cities were not merely clusters of homes. They were monumental urban landscapes built with precision and grandeur. Towering pyramids, intricately carved stone temples, and vast ceremonial plazas dominated the skyline, designed to showcase both religious devotion and royal authority. The Maya mastered the art of engineering, creating sophisticated water management systems, including reservoirs and canals, to sustain large populations even during dry seasons. Streets and causeways connected neighborhoods and markets, facilitating trade and communication. These cities were hubs of economic activity, where artisans crafted exquisite pottery, jade jewelry, and obsidian tools that were traded across vast distances. One of the most astonishing achievements of the Maya was their deep understanding of astronomy and mathematics. Without modern instruments, they observed the movements of celestial bodies with incredible precision. Maya astronomer priests could predict solar eclipses, track the cycles of Venus, and align their ceremonial buildings with the solstices and equinoxes. This astronomical knowledge was not just for scientific curiosity. It was deeply tied to their religious beliefs. The Maya saw time as cyclical, and their calendars, including the famous long count, were central to planning rituals, agricultural planting, and royal ceremonies. Their mathematical system, which included the concept of zero long before it appeared in Europe, allowed for complex calculations that supported both their astronomy and architecture. The Maya also developed one of the most sophisticated writing systems in the pre-Columbian Americas, a complex form of hieroglyphic script that combined logograms and phonetic symbols. This script was carved into stone monuments, painted on pottery, and written in codices made from bark paper. These inscriptions recorded the deeds of rulers, religious myths, astronomical events, and political alliances. Through these writings, we know of powerful figures like Kinich Pakal of Palenque, who reigned for nearly 70 years, and of epic battles between rival cities. This literacy was not limited to the elite. Scribes and artisans were respected members of Maya society, preserving knowledge that has allowed modern archaeologists and linguists to unlock many of the civilization's secrets. At the heart of Maya life was a complex religious worldview that intertwined nature, astronomy, and the supernatural. They believed their kings served as mediators between the human and divine realms, performing elaborate rituals to maintain cosmic balance. Temples and pyramids were built as sacred mountains, connecting the earthly world to the heavens above and the underworld below. Religious festivals involved music, dance, offerings, and sometimes bloodletting or human sacrifice, acts believed to nourish the gods and ensure survival of the people. This deep spiritual connection shaped their art, architecture, and governance, uniting communities under a shared cosmology. Agriculture was the backbone of the Maya economy, with maize, beans, squash, and chili peppers forming the staple diet. Farmers practiced techniques, such as terracing, raised fields, and slash-and-burn cultivation to adapt to the varied landscapes of the Maya lowlands and highlands. Surplus production supported urban growth, allowing cities to sustain large populations of artisans, scribes, warriors, and priests. The control of food resources also reinforced political power, as rulers could reward allies and punish enemies through access to essential goods. Trade extended beyond food, bringing exotic items like cacao, salt, obsidian, and precious feathers from distant regions, integrating the Maya into a broader network of exchange that reached across Mesoamerica. Culturally, the Maya were unmatched in their artistry and attention to detail. Murals in Bonampak vividly depict scenes of courtly life, warfare, and ritual, while intricately carved lintels and steely capture moments of royal triumph and divine invocation. Their ball game, played in stone courts with rubber balls, was both a sport and a sacred ritual, symbolizing the eternal struggle between life and death, day and night. Victories in the ball game could carry political and religious significance, sometimes culminating in sacrifices meant to honor the gods. Every aspect of Maya life was infused with symbolism, from the colors of their clothing to the layout of their cities. The golden age of the Maya created an impression of permanence and stability. Yet, as history would reveal, this brilliance concealed underlying tensions. The political landscape was fragmented, with alliances constantly shifting and rivalries simmering between powerful city-states. Periods of prosperity were often punctuated by wars, raids, and the rise and fall of dynasties. Environmental factors, while managed skillfully for centuries, would later prove vulnerable to changes in climate. But in this moment, during the height of their civilization, the Maya seemed invincible, their influence stretching across hundreds of miles, their culture radiating from the heart of the jungles. Today, the remnants of this golden era continue to captivate archaeologists, historians, and travelers alike. The ruins of cities like Chichen Itza and Tikal stand as monumental reminders of society that combined intellectual brilliance with artistic mastery. Each carved stone and abandoned temple whispers stories of rulers, priests, warriors, and farmers whose lives were woven into the grand tapestry of Maya history. Understanding the glory of the Maya before their decline is essential for grasping the mystery of their collapse, a mystery that still invites exploration and debate among scholars worldwide. Scientific research over the last several decades has revealed that one of the most critical factors in the decline of the Maya civilization was a series of severe and prolonged droughts that struck the region during the late Classic period. Evidence gathered from lake sediments, stalagmites, and ancient tree rings tells a consistent story of dramatic reductions in rainfall between the 8th and 10th centuries AD. For a society so deeply dependent on seasonal rains to feed its people and sustain its urban centers, these climatic changes were catastrophic. The Maya heartland, particularly the southern lowlands, had no large rivers to rely on for a constant water supply. Instead, they depended on rainfall to fill reservoirs, cisterns, and natural depressions known as bajos. When the rains failed, these systems began to dry, and the consequences rippled through every level of Maya life. Maize, the staple crop of the Maya diet, was extremely vulnerable to changes in rainfall. Without consistent wet seasons, fields withered, harvest diminished, and food supplies quickly ran short. The loss of maize was not just an agricultural problem. It was a cultural and spiritual crisis. The Maya had long believed that humans were created from maize, and its abundance was tied to the favor of the gods. When droughts persisted and crops failed year after year, it was not simply seen as bad luck, but as a sign of divine displeasure. Priests and rulers, who were responsible for maintaining cosmic balance through rituals, found their authority questioned. Elaborate ceremonies, offerings, and even human sacrifices were performed in the hope of restoring the rains. But the skies remained unyielding. The environmental stress caused by drought also impacted other critical resources. Deforestation, which had been increasing due to the demand for timber and agricultural land, worsened the effects of reduced rainfall. Without forest cover, soils dried out more quickly, water retention decreased, and erosion intensified. As the land degraded, farmers were forced to move to more marginal areas, further reducing yields and increasing competition for arable land. In urban centers, water shortages led to rationing, and the distribution of what little remained became a source of political tension. Those in power often prioritized their own courts and elite classes, leaving common people to endure the harshest consequences. The combination of famine and scarcity eroded the foundations of Maya society. Malnutrition became widespread, weakening immune systems and making populations more susceptible to disease. Children were particularly affected, and the decline in their health threatened the generational continuity of communities. Starvation also sparked migration, as entire families abandoned drought-stricken areas in search of better conditions elsewhere. This movement of people placed new pressures on neighboring regions, sometimes leading to conflict as host communities resisted the influx of refugees. The balance between city-states, already fragile, was further destabilized by the growing struggle for survival. Archaeological evidence suggests that some of the largest Maya cities, such as Tikal and Copan, experienced sharp population declines during these drought years. Excavations have uncovered signs of abandoned homes, half-finished construction projects, and ceremonial centers left incomplete. The bustling marketplaces that had once thrived with goods from across Mesoamerica grew silent as long-distance trade became more difficult in a time of scarcity. The once flourishing economic networks began to break apart, further isolating cities from the resources they needed to endure the crisis. The impact of drought on the Maya cannot be understood in isolation from their social and political systems. The Maya world was made up of independent city-states that competed for power and influence. In times of plenty, this competition drove cultural and technological advancement. In times of environmental stress, however, it often led to increased warfare and political fragmentation. Instead of pooling resources to confront the crisis, rival cities sometimes used the weakness of their neighbors as an opportunity to expand territory or secure control over vital water sources. Battles over reservoirs, fertile land, and trade routes became more frequent, and the human cost of these conflicts added to the toll taken by hunger and disease. The droughts also forced changes in religious practice and worldview. As traditional rituals failed to bring relief, some communities may have turned to new deities or altered their ceremonial calendars. The iconography from this period shows a shift in focus toward rain gods and fertility symbols, perhaps reflecting an increased desperation to appeal to divine forces for survival. Rulers who could not deliver prosperity risked losing their legitimacy, leading to uprisings, coups, or the outright abandonment of leadership structures. In some cases, cities simply dissolved as residents dispersed into rural areas where they could live closer to the resources they needed. While the droughts were devastating, they were not uniform across the Maya region. Some areas, particularly in the northern Yucatan, appear to have been less affected by the collapse than the southern lowlands. Cities like Chichen Itzá rose to prominence during this time, possibly benefiting from migration and trade shifts caused by the crisis elsewhere. However, even these centers were not immune to the long-term consequences of environmental instability. Eventually, the interconnected nature of Maya culture meant that the collapse in one area reverberated throughout the entire network of city-states. In the modern era, the study of Maya droughts has taken on new significance as scientists draw parallels between ancient climate challenges and present-day environmental issues. The Maya experience serves as a powerful reminder how vulnerable even the most advanced societies can be to changes in the natural world. It highlights the importance of sustainable resource management, resilience planning, and the dangers of over-reliance on fragile environmental systems. The story of the Maya droughts is one of both tragedy and resilience. While the environmental catastrophe contributed greatly to the decline of their great cities, the Maya people themselves endured. Descendants still live across Central America, speaking Maya languages, practicing traditional agriculture, and preserving cultural knowledge. Their survival, despite centuries of hardship, is a testament to the adaptability and endurance of human societies in the face of nature's most formidable challenges. The Maya world was never a single, unified empire ruled from a central capital. Instead, it was a vast network of independent city-states, each governed by its own king or queen, and each determined to assert dominance over its rivals. While this competitive system fueled cultural growth during times of prosperity, it also laid the foundation for political instability. The rivalries between these kingdoms often erupted into full-scale warfare, and over time, the frequency and intensity of these conflicts escalated. Cities like Tikal and Calakmul, two of the most powerful Maya centers, engaged in centuries-long struggles for supremacy. These wars were not occasional border skirmishes, but carefully orchestrated campaigns aimed at capturing enemy rulers, seizing valuable resources, and weakening the political influence of opponents. Warfare in the Maya world was deeply tied to their political and religious systems. Victories were not measured solely in territory gain, but in the prestige of capturing high-ranking enemies for public display and ritual sacrifice. Kings demonstrated their legitimacy and divine favor through successful conquests, parading their captives in elaborate ceremonies. The imagery carved into stone monuments shows bound prisoners kneeling at the feet of victorious rulers, a powerful symbol meant to inspire loyalty among allies and fear among enemies. However, these victories came at a high cost. Mobilizing armies required immense resources: food for warriors, weapons crafted from obsidian and flint, and the diversion of labor away from farming and construction. The longer these conflicts continued, the more they strained the economic foundations of Maya cities. The constant threat of war disrupted trade networks that had once been vital to Maya prosperity. Goods such as obsidian from the highlands, salt from coastal regions, cacao from tropical zones, and intricately crafted jade ornaments flowed along established routes connecting distant regions. As warfare intensified, these trade routes became dangerous, and merchants risked losing both cargo and life. The interruption of commerce weakened alliances, reduced the availability of luxury goods that supported elite lifestyles, and limited the flow of essential resources to urban populations. Without stable trade, cities became more insular, further eroding the interdependence that had once strengthened the Maya world. In addition to economic disruption, prolonged warfare created widespread social instability. The recruitment of young men into military campaigns removed able-bodied workers from agricultural fields, directly reducing food production. Communities already stressed by drought and environmental degradation faced further hardship when their labor force was diverted to fight distant battles. Civilian populations often became casualties of these conflicts, either through direct violence or as victims of famine when armies raided fields and seized supplies. In some cases, entire villages were relocated or destroyed to punish opposition or secure strategic advantages. Political fragmentation also made it difficult for the Maya to respond collectively to larger crises. When environmental challenges such as drought began to threaten food supplies, a more unified system might have coordinated relief efforts, shared resources, or organized joint infrastructure projects. Instead, rival city-states often use moments of weakness to attack their neighbors, seizing territory or capturing laborers to bolster their own survival. This cycle of opportunism deepened mistrust and ensured that no single leader could rally the entire Maya region against the looming threats. The competition between Maya city-states was fueled in part by their hierarchical political culture. Rulers were expected to expand their influence, and military success was a primary measure of their worth. The construction of massive monuments, temples, and ceremonial complexes was often tied to military victories, with stelae and inscriptions commemorating battles and conquests. While these displays reinforced the ruler's image in the short term, they also encouraged an arms race of monumental building and military expansion. Maintaining this pace during times of scarcity became unsustainable, and many rulers overextended their resources in the pursuit of prestige. The legacy of these wars is still visible in the archaeological record. Excavations at sites like Dos Pilas and Aguatica have revealed fortifications, defensive walls, and strategically placed watchtowers, clear evidence that cities were preparing for frequent attacks. Abandoned palaces show signs of sudden destruction, suggesting that enemy forces breached defenses and forced ruling families to flee or face capture. Burn layers in residential zones indicate that some cities suffered deliberate and widespread destruction during their final days. Warfare also influenced the spiritual and psychological dimensions of Maya society. The constant cycle of raids, sieges, and sacrifices reinforced a worldview where violence was an accepted and even necessary part of maintaining cosmic balance. The Maya believed that the gods required offerings of blood and life to ensure the continuation of the world, and war provided a steady supply of such offerings. However, as defeats mounted and victories became less frequent, rulers risked being seen as having lost divine favor. This erosion of confidence in leadership could lead to rebellion within the city-state, further destabilizing the region. By the late 8th and early 9th centuries, the combination of relentless political infighting, economic disruption, and environmental challenges created a perfect storm for collapse. The inability of city-states to unite in the face of common threats meant that each was left to fend for itself. As powerful centers like Tikal and Calakmul weakened, smaller cities and rural populations found themselves without the protection or resources they had once relied on. In many cases, people simply abandoned their cities, seeking safety and stability in less contested regions. The story of Maya political fragmentation is a cautionary tale about the dangers of internal division in the face of external stress. While warfare had long been a part of Maya life, the intensity and scale of conflict during the civilization's final centuries drained its resilience. The obsession with rivalry and prestige overshadowed the need for cooperation, leaving the Maya vulnerable to the very forces, both natural and human, that would eventually bring about the end of their great urban centers. Yet even in collapse, the political sophistication and military strategies of the Maya remain a testament to their complexity as a civilization, offering lessons that continue to resonate in studies of ancient and modern societies alike. The Maya civilization, once the dominant power of Mesoamerica, faced a period of severe environmental decline that became one of the most significant triggers for its collapse. While political instability and warfare weakened societal fabric, the impact of prolonged droughts proved to be a devastating blow to an already vulnerable system. Evidence from lake sediments, cave stalagmites, and climate reconstructions reveals that between the 8th and 10th centuries, the Maya region experienced multiple episodes of extreme drought, some lasting decades. These droughts were not short, sporadic events. They were sustained, severe, and widespread across the Yucatan Peninsula, the southern lowlands, and even the highlands. For a civilization that relied heavily on seasonal rains to replenish reservoirs, irrigate crops, and sustain dense urban populations, such a drastic shift in climate was catastrophic. Without consistent rainfall, maize, the staple crop that sustained the majority of the population, failed year after year, triggering widespread famine. The environmental crisis was made worse by the Maya's own agricultural practices. In their quest to feed millions, the Maya cleared vast areas of forest for farming. This large-scale deforestation not only reduced biodiversity, but also altered local climate conditions. Forests play a critical role in retaining soil moisture and regulating rainfall patterns. With much of the forest canopy gone, the soil dried out faster, water retention diminished, and the land became increasingly prone to erosion. As topsoil washed away during rare but heavy rains, agricultural productivity plummeted. The Maya also engaged in slash-and-burn farming in some regions, which, while effective in the short term, depleted soil nutrients over time. Combined with the relentless drought, the agricultural collapse was inevitable. Water scarcity became an urgent daily struggle. Many Maya cities, particularly those in the southern lowlands, lacked natural rivers or lakes, depending instead on man-made reservoirs and underground cisterns known as choltons. These were carefully engineered to store precious rainwater, but when the rains failed, these systems could not meet the demand. Archaeological excavations reveal evidence of desperate attempts to deepen reservoirs, expand water storage, and even transport water from distant sources. However, with entire populations relying on dwindling reserves, tensions over access to water intensified. Such scarcity often drove migration, with people abandoning once great cities in search of more reliable water sources, further contributing to urban decline. The drought did not impact all Maya regions equally. While the southern lowlands saw the most dramatic depopulation, northern cities like Chichen Itza initially managed to adapt by implementing more advanced water management systems and shifting their economies toward trade and coastal resources. However, even these northern centers could not completely escape the far-reaching effects of the prolonged dry periods. Trade networks became strained as food surpluses dwindled and social unrest followed. The inability to sustain large armies, feed urban populations, and maintain elite privileges eroded the foundations of political power across the region. Cultural and religious life also suffered under environmental strain. The Maya believed their rulers maintained a sacred connection with the gods, ensuring rainfall and agricultural prosperity through rituals and offerings. When drought persisted despite these ceremonies, the perceived failure of the ruler's divine mandate undermined their legitimacy. Inscriptions and iconography from the late classic period suggest an increase in desperate religious practices, including more frequent bloodletting and offerings to the rain god Chak. Yet the skies remained dry, and faith in the ruling class weakened further. The environmental collapse was not merely a backdrop to political and social instability. It was a driving force that accelerated the breakdown of the Maya world. It created a vicious cycle. As food and water became scarce, warfare for resources intensified. As warfare disrupted trade and agriculture, scarcity worsened. Even when rains eventually returned, the intricate societal networks that once sustained the civilization had already fractured. By the time the Spanish arrived centuries later, the great stone cities of the southern lowlands had been abandoned to the jungle, their plazas silent, their temples reclaimed by nature. The Maya people endured, but their political and cultural zenith was gone, a stark reminder how environmental change can unravel even the most advanced and enduring civilizations in history. Beneath the glistening surface of Lake Guatavita, countless legends have been woven through time. This sacred crater lake, surrounded by lush Colombian mountains, was more than a body of water to the indigenous Muisca people. It was a center of a profound spiritual ritual that would ignite one of the greatest treasure hunts in human history. The Spanish conquistadors, upon hearing whispers of gold offerings made to gods, envisioned untold riches lying beneath its depths. They pictured golden ornaments, emeralds, and treasures beyond imagination, resting on the lakebed, untouched for centuries. Their greed transformed the lake from a place of reverence into a target for relentless expeditions. The Muisca's ritual was awe-inspiring. A newly chosen leader, covered head to toe in fine gold dust, would sail to the lake's center, surrounded by priests and attendants in ornate canoes, while a crowd onshore watched in reverent silence. At the climax of the ceremony, the gold-covered leader would plunge into the water, offering precious metals, jewels, and treasures to the gods. To the Muisca, this was an act of devotion. To the Spaniards, it was an invitation to plunder. The Spanish attempts to drain Lake Guatavita were as ambitious as they were destructive. In 1545, Hernán Pérez de Quesada tried lowering the lake's water level by cutting a massive notch into the crater wall, only to be met with a landslide. Decades later, in 1580, a more elaborate effort was launched by Antonio de Sepúlveda, who employed hundreds of indigenous laborers to dig a deep trench. After 3 months of grueling work, the water receded, revealing mud and scattered treasures, some gold ornaments, ceremonial offerings, and precious stones. Yet the vast wealth they imagined remained elusive. The lake, it seemed, guarded its secrets fiercely. These expeditions claimed many lives, both from exhaustion and from the dangerous working conditions, and the lake's environment suffered irreparable damage. Still, the lure of the El Dorado treasure kept drawing fortune seekers for centuries to come. The 19th and early 20th centuries saw renewed attempts, now aided by more advanced engineering. In 1898, an English company invested heavily in draining the lake, constructing a tunnel through the crater wall. When the waters were lowered, the lake bed turned into a thick, suffocating swamp. Workers sank knee-deep into the mud, and any treasure buried there remained unreachable. The project bankrupted the company, and its failure became a cautionary tale of how ambition can outpace practicality. Even in the mid-20th century, occasional treasure hunting ventures persisted, but none succeeded in uncovering the vast trove described in conquistador accounts. Instead, divers found a few artifacts, small golden figures, pottery, and jewelry, that now reside in museums, serving as cultural relics rather than riches to be spent. Modern archaeological studies have painted a different picture of Lake Guatavita's treasure. While Muisca indeed made offerings of gold and emeralds, they were symbolic gestures, not the massive hoard imagined by treasure hunters. The lake's ceremonial importance lay in its spiritual meaning, representing the bond between the people and their gods. In recent decades, the Colombian government has moved to protect the lake from further exploitation, recognizing it as a national heritage site. Environmental preservation laws now prohibit dredging or draining, ensuring that Lake Guatavita remains as untouched as possible, allowing nature to reclaim what was once disturbed. Today, the lake draws historians, archaeologists, and travelers from around the world, not in search of gold, but to experience its beauty and mystery. The emerald green waters, encircled by steep crater walls, shimmer under the Andean sun, evoking a sense of timelessness. The legend of El Dorado continues to captivate imaginations, inspiring books, films, and documentaries. Yet the truth behind it, rooted in cultural rituals and the power of belief, is far richer than any material treasure. For the History Vault audience, this is more than a tale of lost gold. It's a story of how myth can drive human ambition, shape history, and leave behind both wonder and caution. The real treasure, perhaps, lies not at the lake's bottom, but in the enduring legacy of the Muisca people and the lessons their story offers about reverence, respect, and the dangers of greed. The story you've just heard is only the beginning. Countless mysteries still lie beneath the sands, within forgotten scrolls and behind locked doors of time. If you want to continue uncovering the hidden truths of our world, make sure you subscribe to History Vault. Turn on notifications so you never miss our deep dives into history's most compelling secrets. Share this journey with fellow seekers of truth, and let's build a community of curious minds unafraid to question the past. History doesn't just belong to books, it belongs to us all. Until next time, keep the past alive.